So we are on, and we'll just give a minute or two for participants to join us.
Great.
You can see people coming through.
I think it's just you that's got, I'm not seeing any waiting room or anything, so.
No, there isn't a waiting room. I can see people are joining us now. So great. Just give it a minute or two. So good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to wait for the participants to join us. I can see a few are joining, so just give a few seconds and then we'll make a start. Right. So, Laura, are you okay to, shall we make a start?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our monthly webinar series. And we have been bringing topics related to talent acquisition and development. And I'm Renu Gundala, founder of Talent Grader. Today, we have with us Laura Harrison, head of consultancy from Clevery. And we've had fantastic response to this webinar. Lots of registrations have come through. So great to be finishing on a high in 2021. This is our final webinar for 2021. So welcome, everyone. So before I introduce Laura to you properly, I'm going to do just talk through a couple of housekeeping points. So we've allocated 45 minutes for this session. And we'll give you 20 minutes towards the end to ask any questions to Laura or myself. But the session is being recorded, so don't worry about making notes. The recording, the slides will be available to you after the webinar. We'll share the links with you. And if you have any questions throughout the session as well, so feel free to just pop your questions in using the Q&A function instead of the chat function, so that all the questions are in one place for us to look at the end. And so those of you who don't know about Talent Grader launched I have to slow down, don't I? So you can probably tell I'm ready for Christmas. Talent Grader launched last year. It's a dedicated assessment platform for supporting SMEs, HR, and recruitment professionals. It was designed with and launched with an aim to make it easy to find reliable and valid talent assessments, rather than typing Google or just approaching the familiar brands. There's so many different assessments available in the market. So we launched with an aim to support you all, and we are also a recruitment agency that has been supporting SMEs with recruitment needs. So now I'm going to introduce Laura to you all. Laura, it's a great pleasure to have you with us today. Laura has been working as a head of consultancy at Clevery, and she's an expert in all things not recruitment, recruitment is me, psychometrics. And she has wealth of experience working with many clients across different sectors in designing bespoke solutions that includes both assessments and behavioral assessments, as well as psychometrics. So if you don't mind me sharing, Laura, fortunately or unfortunately, I've heard that you kind of had a experience where you were in a role that didn't suit your strengths. It can be a painful experience, and most of us or some of us can relate to that experience. And it can be a detriment to the organization as well as individuals, isn't it? And with that lived experience, Laura has been passionately working and helping organizations to use tools to help people find jobs that bring them joy. We all know happy minds are productive minds, aren't they? So without further ado, I'd say Laura is best placed to take us through this session. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Renu. That's a lovely introduction. And yes, just echoing that, that's very much our passion here at Clevery, and certainly My passion as well is just helping work with organisations and individuals to use various tools to help themselves find roles that fit them and that they can seek joy within. The focus of today's session is going to be looking at two things. One is psychometrics, which at Clevery, it's our bread and butter. It's something that we know lots about, being psychometric designers and test publishers ourselves. And the second is around onboarding. So this is a stage in our recruitment process. It's probably something that we've all had different experiences of in different roles, different organisations, different settings, etc. But it's something where we're hoping to challenge your perceptions of and maybe get you thinking a little bit differently about what onboarding actually looks like and what it means. So psychometrics and onboarding is the focus of this session, and the aim is to help give you some practical ideas and tools to maximise your onboarding process. So we'll start off with a question. So what is onboarding? When we talk about onboarding, we're really talking about the process that an individual goes through in order to reach success in their role. Okay, so this is normally looking at the very early stages when you begin within a new role within an organisation. How do I get up to speed? How do I understand what my role actually looks like in action and get myself working in that way? Now, traditionally, onboarding tends to be quite a transactional thing. So it's a skills transfer. You join a business and the managers, HR team, whoever's involved in the onboarding process will get involved in trying to transfer that knowledge and skills in terms of how they do that job. That's going to be done in different ways. It could be done through literally just handing over documents for them to look at, giving them information about the organisation, the policies, the processes that they need to follow. It could be done in the form of webinars, training sessions, shadowing, mentoring, lots of different things that are a bit more active in terms of building up their knowledge. And onboarding is also going to be a gradual process of getting them used to actually doing the job. So normally that's done in a bit of a piecemeal way to give people small bits of the job at various different intervals to get them used to doing the job, to get them up to speed with being able to deliver. Now, it's relatively transactional in its focus there. So when you ask people to describe onboarding, they will describe it in this sort of way. So building up knowledge, building up skills, and building up expertise. But what onboarding also is a bit of a transformational experience as well. So the way to look at onboarding is that stage in the employee life cycle where they become a part of that organisation, where they are able to really start to embody what it means to be a new sales manager, to be a new customer service advisor, to be a new CEO, whatever it might be. So it's that transformation of the individual into someone who's able to demonstrate the skills, the abilities of that role in an effective way, but also someone that's a part of that organisation, that's aligned with the culture, that's aligned with their ways of working, and is able to, be the best they can be in that role. So I'd like to ask you all a question. I'll ask Rennie to help me with this poll just now. So I want you to think about the organisation that you currently work within and ask yourself, how do you think people in your business would rate your onboarding process? So you've got some options on the screen here. Do you think they would rate it as poor, as okay, as good, or as great? We've got some votes coming in here. I'm going to wait for a few moments for more of you to vote. This is just your opinion. I promise it's anonymous and just your thoughts on how you think your onboarding process currently is. Brilliant. Fantastic.
Shall I put the results on the screen now?
Please do, yes, Rennie, if you want to share the results of what came in here. So it's looking like 47% of you have said that you think people would rate it as good. So 47% of you saying that it's good, 13% saying that it's great, 27% say it's okay, and 13% say it's poor. Okay, so a bit of a mix there in terms of the different experiences. What I would love is if whilst you were thinking about that question, any examples or experiences came to mind that you'd be happy to share with the group, pop them in the chat and we can come to those at the end. It'd be great to hear some of your thoughts and experiences that kind of steered your answer to that question. But it's an important question, and it's something which a lot of research has gone into to look broadly at different organisational practices when it comes to onboarding and how people actually experience them. And if you are one of the individuals who rated it as maybe okay or even poor, one thing to say is you're not alone. And what we actually find is if you look at lots of different organisations, you will find that the majority of people do not rate their onboarding process as currently being great. Okay, so only 12% of employees rating their onboarding experience or the onboarding process within their organisation as being great. So that means 80 to 8% do not think that it's particularly good at the moment. So that's a big statistic. So it's something that we know is happening across the board. Okay. Now, what you'll find is different organisations will have different things in place, and that an onboarding process, even within the same organisation, from one job to the next job, might look completely different. Okay, so you're getting lots of inconsistencies there. But this trend here tells us that there's something about the experience which employees don't think is working particularly well for them. So what's the problem? Well, three trends that come out when we look at, I guess, what's causing issues, or what are the things that people don't like about their onboarding process, or that is causing people to see it as not very good. These three things come out really, really strongly in terms of the evidence here. The first is around, well, people don't actually put a lot of resource into this. Okay, so if you look at the amount of money that organisations spend on things like their recruitment processes, or even within their development space, versus how much they spend looking at the onboarding process itself, it's really, really lacking in this space. So it's seen as something that's just, part and parcel of what you should be doing. It falls with the, the new line manager to do the majority of the work. Maybe HR do a little bit in terms of getting them up to speed, but it's not something that people are really wanting to invest in. Okay, so there's not the money there to support it. Because there's no money, there's no time allocation, there's no resources, and it's very difficult to have a team of individuals to be able to support that onboarding process for all new people. It also results in a lack of structure and processes, which leads to this point on the far right-hand side here in terms of inconsistency of approach. So even within organisations, your experience of an onboarding process might be really, really different to a colleague of yours that joined 6 months ago, or a colleague of yours that works in a slightly different team and has a different manager. That's even the case in organisations who would claim on the surface to have quite a structured onboarding process. Maybe they've got a plan, it's a 6-month plan, they've got goals in there, they've got tasks, they've got checklists, they've got, all the bells and whistles in terms of that onboarding process. Even in those instances, the approach can be really inconsistent. And that inconsistency is often to do with the fact that the experience of that process will be different dependent on the individual themselves, how they interact with that onboarding process and how it works for them, and also the manager who's leading that onboarding process. Have they got time for it? Do they believe in certain elements of it? Or are they just ticking things off the list because they don't think it's that important and they just want to tick the boxes? Okay, so you get real inconsistency in terms of the way that they're implemented. And the final point here, relates to what I was saying earlier about it being quite a transactional process. So it tends to focus on teaching them processes, getting them to sign the right paperwork, giving them the right access to various materials. It's quite transactional. It's very much, here's the information that you need to do the job. Here you go off and do it. And because we're focusing on those processes and paperwork, it means that the experience is heavily reliant on the individual in terms of how they actually use that information effectively to go on and do the job. So focusing on processes and paperwork. Again, if any of these are standing out to you that you think, do you know what, that's exactly what we do in our business, then pop that in the chat. Or if we're missing something, if you think there's a reason why yours isn't working that effectively, again, do share that. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts as well. So, does it actually matter? Well, the answer is yes. So if we focus on the organisations that do have a really robust and good onboarding process in place, we see some incredible results. The first thing is to do with employee retention, and this is a really important one if we're talking, very bluntly about, cost savings for your business. So we know that turnover of staff is a very expensive thing for your organisation, and people leaving soon, so within their first 3 to 6 months in a role, that's extremely expensive for you as a business because you're getting essentially nothing, and you've put a lot of money into your recruitment process and to try and get them up to speed. So it's expensive. If you get onboarding right, though, the organisations who have great onboarding processes report that employee retention can improve by up to 82%. So really, really effective in terms of getting people to actually stay within the organisation. What you also find is that you're 58% more likely to be with the organisation 3 years on. So if people have a good onboarding experience, they're more likely to stay in the longer term. Now, you could argue around the cause and effect of what we're seeing there. So surely if someone's found the organisation that's really motivating for them, is a really good fit, they're going to have a better onboarding experience and therefore they'll stay for longer. But we do know that actually what you do as an employer to give them a good onboarding experience and set them up for success will have an impact on this as well. Okay, so it will enable them to see faster if this is something that they can stick with and set them up for that sort of mindset throughout their career with you. You'll also find that people get up to speed quicker. So they'll gain full proficiency within their role 4 months faster than those that have a bad onboarding experience. So really great if you've got a really high value role where you need people who are going to be hitting the ground running. The more support you can give them in that onboarding stage, setting them up for success, more likely they are to get there quicker. And finally, if you look at how much people enjoy their roles, you're 54% more engaged in your role if you've had a good onboarding experience as well. So really, really positive outcomes that we see if we get onboarding right. Finally, good onboarding is good for business. So I've talked about the cost savings in terms of reduction in employee turnover. Obviously saving you money there, but you also know when people leave a business, you find that actually replacing even just an entry-level role within your organisation can cost you 30 to 50% of their salary. For a mid-level role, that's even higher. So to replace someone in a mid-level role, it's going to cost you about 150% of that individual's salary to replace them. So getting it right is got those business benefits that you're looking for. So what are you missing? Well, there's probably a lot that goes into this, but the thing that we're going to focus on today is starting to shift your mindset of onboarding being that transactional process and onboarding instead being more of a transformational process. So we know that really effective onboarding will have a focus on establishing the relationship with the employer. So how do I understand what my role is, how I contribute to the business, where my key stakeholders are and how I work with them. But truly great onboarding is a bit more psychological. So great onboarding is about understanding the psychological makeup of this new individual, how that plays out in their team, and how that impacts their relationship with the manager that they'll be working with. So let's talk about this concept of psychological onboarding. So here we're talking about using an understanding of an individual's preferences, their style, motivations, values, how they enjoy working, and how they work best within a role. Looking at how they like to be managed, looking at what motivates them, what makes them successful, and how they are likely to build relationships with team members and across the business. This understanding of these elements of the individual will enable them to build more valuable relationships with, for example, their new manager. So it's about having this psychological process where we're really getting to the under the skin of what makes this person tick. How does this person like to work? And we're enabling the manager to have that information as well. So as a manager, how can I take that understanding of how this person likes to work to get them off the ground in the best possible way, to get them onboarded and to get them valuing their role and working successfully. So this principle of psychological onboarding, it might seem a little bit abstract, but it's something that we do have a specific tool for. Some of you might be familiar with this, some of you won't be. But I'm going to talk to you about something that we've created that is enabling lots of the businesses that we work with to create this psychological onboarding step within their onboarding process. So it's something called the onboarding report. It looks like this. In terms of what it does, is it's supporting the new manager and the individual to build rapport and build an effective relationship with one another. It's supporting the manager to integrate the new recruit into their team. And it's highlighting the new employee's strengths to help them hit the ground running. Final thing it's doing is just helping build a bit of self-awareness as well. So we know that people who are able to really identify what their strengths are, what their potential gaps are as well, and how they like to work, are likely to be more effective at getting up to speed quicker within a role because they really understand themselves and how to apply themselves in the best possible way. What the onboarding report will do is it looks at these 4 key areas of onboarding to give some valuable insights into how to get the best for this individual. The first thing it looks at is called the interaction area. So here we're looking at how our interpersonal style shapes how we enjoy working with others. So for example, do I feel at my best when I have the opportunity to work independently or as part of a group? Do I feel at my best when I get to take an assertive role or when I'm more supportive in my interactions? Do I feel my best when I have the opportunity to influence others? Or do I tend to take a bit more of an accepting role in the way that I like to work? Now, there's often no right or wrongs with these sorts of things, but it's valuable information to understand for you as an individual and to have that conversation with your new manager who knows your team, knows your role and knows your business. Have that open conversation about how my preferences in terms of how I like to interact and work with people, how's that going to play out in this role? Where can I have opportunities to play to my strengths and play to the way that I like working? And also, when should I be prepared to flex? So if, for example, I know that my role is going to involve me being outside of my comfort zone, for example, if I'm going to be required to work independently quite frequently, but I enjoy working with others, again, that's a really good thing to flag up in those early onboarding stages to help the manager and the individual come up with a bit of a strategy in terms of, well, how can I manage that flex? How can I make sure that when I'm outside of my comfort zone, I'm able to do the best job? Second area is stimulation. So this is around the kinds of tasks that we embrace, which allow us to work in ways that we find stimulating. So, for example, do I enjoy it when I am required to make decisions quickly? Do I enjoy it when I am required to take quite a rational approach, where I need to gather data and evidence behind a particular decision or project? Do I enjoy roles where I have to be quite detail conscious and be looking at the real detail of documents, or am I more of a someone who's less inclined to that way of working? Third area is around reward. So what sort of motivational priorities do I have? What kind of work am I going to find very fulfilling? Again, really valuable insight for you as a manager to understand how best to motivate this individual. What are they actually going to find rewarding? So, for example, am I someone who enjoys the opportunity to progress within a role? So, looking for either, status within the business, or am I looking for the opportunity to compete with my colleagues? I might also be rewarded by something a bit more intrinsic. So do I like the opportunity to build my knowledge and to develop myself in order to feel fulfilled in my role? Or perhaps I just like working towards goals. Okay, so my motivation is around having some goals set for myself in order to work effectively. And then the final thing here is around environment. So this is around how we thrive. What kind of cultural environment within a business will nurture our key values? Again, that's essential for a manager to know, because they will be able to have that open discussion with them around how their values may fit with the organizational culture or the team's culture that they're going to be working with. Okay, how do we make sure that there's that balance there, and that there's the understanding of where there is the synergy of the values, but also if there is areas where there's differences in terms of those values, let's have a strategy in terms of how we can work better together. So things that you might find in that environment section might be someone enjoys the opportunity to work in an environment where there is the opportunity for humour. So, just having a joke within your role. Or it could be people enjoy working in an environment where there is high amounts of change. So change-orientated business. I'm sure a lot of you will relate to that as a business now. Or it could be some people value the opportunity to work in an environment with high professional ethics. That's really important to them, and it's something that they want to see in the business. You've got these 4 different things. They're going to tell you about the individual, how they like to work, and how that fits best with the organisation. What it will then do is it will tell the manager and the individual a little bit about specific traits within those 4 different domains. So the first, some examples here in the stimulation domain, you can see here that we've got 2 strengths for this individual. So Mikkel in this instance likes to get on with tasks and will look for quick and beneficial ways to do this. Okay, so that's called expedient. So they like to work quickly. So me, if I was Mikkel's manager, I would know that that's likely to be stimulating for them. If I've got a task or a project that's got a short deadline and it needs to be done quickly, Mikkel's going to probably find that quite stimulating. Mikkel also draws on his inspiration and experience when solving problems. So that's called intuitive. So I know that if I am looking for Mikkel's counsel or advice on certain things, that's likely to be the sort of input that they will give. They're likely to tell me about their personal experience of that and intuitively how they might feel about that situation. So if I was looking for more of a data-driven approach, where maybe I'm looking for some statistics, some evidence, some numbers, maybe Mikkel will be less suited there. Okay, so it's about understanding strengths and potential gaps. In the reward area, some good examples here. So we've got Mikkel feels rewarded and fulfilled by realism. So Mikkel values working in an environment with practical and commercial realities take precedence. Okay, so if if I feel that that's aligned with my organizational culture or the team's culture, then obviously I can have that discussion around how that fits. And encouragement is also something that Mikkel finds rewarding. So Mikkel is strengthened when support and feedback is offered by others, helps them build their inner confidence and self-esteem. So again, as a manager, I know that if I'm looking to make sure that Mikkel feels rewarded and fulfilled, that's how I can do it. That won't be the same for everyone, but for Mikkel, that's something that they value. Now, when we report on these areas, we use something called a 10-10 reporting scale. Okay, so now what that means is you will never get a score or a number in the onboarding report less than a 6. Okay, and the reason for that is as soon as the score becomes lower than that, we will flip it round in terms of how we report it. So, for example, you can see here that we've got expedient as the strength of Mikkel's here. Now, if I was looking at another report, that might be reported as a low result on the rigorous scale. So rigorous is someone that likes to take their time, attend to the details, and make sure that they are doing things as thoroughly as possible. Okay, so the flip side of that is the expedient. So we're describing the strength rather than the lack thereof of another area. Intuitive, for example, on another report, we might describe that as being low on rational. So rational is someone who's evidence based and likes to look at data, science, etc. So we flip that round and we just describe that in terms of the strength of the other side of that scale. So always talking in strengths language, always talking about the benefits of your style. Final thing that it will do is give you some practical advice as well. So this is shown like this. For each of the things that we have measured, encouragement here, we've got wary and expedient. It gives you a description of what that means for Mikkel, and it also gives you some onboarding advice. So because Mikkel values encouragement, we've recommended making time to build Mikkel's confidence when he takes on difficult challenges, and provide Mikkel with support, assurance, and feedback to build his self-belief. And final one here, let's have a look at this. So we've got expedient, which is something Mikkel values. We've said make the most of Mikkel's expedient approach on tasks which need to be completed quickly. Encourage Mikkel to consider when a more thorough and considered approach may be necessary. Okay, so really simple stuff. Tweaks in your style, tweaks in the way that you might interact with this individual based on how they like to work, how you can get the best from them. So there we go, that's psychological onboarding through our onboarding report. I'm going to pause there and open up for questions. But before I do that, I just want to flag with you an opportunity that we've got here. This is an opportunity for you to try this yourself. We've Renu has set up a access to one of our personality questionnaires, the Clevery Personality Questionnaire, and it will enable you to see your own onboarding reports. And you might not be going through an onboarding process at the moment, but it's still a really valuable thing to look at. Have a look at what comes out for you. Have a look at if you were considering your own onboarding process, how might your manager work with you based on what you're seeing in that report? How could they get the best from you based on how you like to work? So I think Renu's going to pop that in the chat for us, so you've got access to that, and it will be sent round after today as well. So thank you very much for listening. I'm going to pause and open up to any questions from the group. I can't actually see any of you, so yeah, I'm just going to open it up. Hopefully,
yeah. Thank you so much, Laura. That was that offers some great insights. I was actually making notes on some of the things you were saying in terms of the stats that are available, like big data on the 88% of people feeling that the onboarding process isn't great, isn't it? That's kind of eye-opening, isn't it, when we think about it? So yeah, lots of great insights to make the onboarding process really personable, valuable, and psychological, as Laura was saying. So we have a couple of questions. Raj just posted a question saying, can the presentation to be sent to us? Yes, we will share the presentation and the recording with all of you, and the link to try the questionnaires as well. So I have a question that was posted earlier, which is, in terms of the profile or the assessment that you were talking about, especially the report, is that suited to certain type of positions? Can that be tailored?
That's a very good question. And yes, it can be tailored to a certain extent. So what you would tailor is what traits you include in there. And what we would always suggest when you're building out a psychometric to use as part of your recruitment process is that you'd think about the attributes, the soft skills that are relevant for the role that you're recruiting for. And you would select the sorts of traits, therefore, relevant to that particular role. And that is essentially how our questionnaire actually works, is that you essentially can build a questionnaire which is directly aligned to what's relevant for the soft skills and attributes for your role. What you're then essentially doing with the onboarding report is you're taking the outputs of the psychometric that you might have actually used as part of your recruitment process. You might have used it to help you, for example, to interview the candidate. You take the same outputs to generate this onboarding report. So what that means is the traits that are being reported in here are the ones that you chose as being relevant for your organisation, relevant for this particular role. So it'd be really nicely tailored, to that role itself. And I think I can see a question around considerations for leaders. I think that's one that you would make as well, is making sure the questionnaire that you've used to generate this onboarding report is one which is aligned to the role. So it's going to come out with the sorts of traits relevant. A good example of that might be, we've got a trait which measures detail conscious. Okay, so this is people that like attending to lots of detail in a particular, in documents, etc. It's something they enjoy doing. If that's not actually part of an individual's role, it might not be a trait that you include in it, therefore. Equally, we've got a trait which measures strategic. So am I the kind of person that likes to be involved in big picture strategic discussions? Or do I prefer to be a bit more practical in the way that I work? Again, if the role will never ask that person to be strategic in the way that they think, then it's not going to be relevant. So we wouldn't include that. So a really easy way of tailoring that output to the role.
That's useful to know. And also in terms of the question on leaders and leadership onboarding, there is data available that also suggests that 50% of the leaders fail in their roles due to lack of support. So that's really eye-opening stat, isn't it? Especially if you're working on exec recruitment. That's something definitely need to be taken into account, isn't it? What support, like you were saying, the theme has been, what can we do to support employees to do their best, isn't it? So that's all. So that applies to leaders as well. So perfect. Thanks for sharing that, Laura. And there's another question in terms of can we extend it beyond onboarding? How can we best use psychometrics beyond onboarding for the rest of the employee life cycle?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think with a report like this, what we've actually found some organisations doing is actually using the same output, the same report with individuals who aren't necessarily being onboarded, but maybe they're in a role, maybe there's a transition they're making, or maybe even there's just a change in the organisation, or maybe they're just having a performance management discussion with their manager. And they use this report in exactly the same way. They sit down with the manager, they go through it. They could have been working with them for years and years, but it's still, could give them valuable insights about the way, their style and their preferences that maybe they've never discussed with their manager before. So you could use this exact report, even if you're not onboarding, even if you are just at a point in your career, at your time within an organisation, where that would be of benefit to just help you build that relationship. It's also a great tool to use if you are having, if there is some form of conflict maybe with your manager or even with a colleague that you're working with. So if there's something about the relationship that you've got with someone who's important to the way that you're working that's not working out for you, Or could you use the onboarding report to sit down with each other and just help to understand each other better in terms of the way that you like to work? Looking past the onboarding report, we are able to use psychometrics in different settings as well. So there's a few other reports which can support that as well. One of them is our team strengths report. This is about helping teams and individuals understand what strengths they bring to a team. And we've also got a leadership report as well, which is focused on helping people understand how their preferences might play out in various aspects of leadership roles. So that's looking at your leading of people, leading of tasks, leading of the way, and leading of yourself, essentially. So looking at those different leadership capacities and looking at how your preferences might play out with that. So yeah, different ways that you could use different reports for different purposes.
So if I understood that correctly, Laura, so if somebody is using that as part of recruitment at another time or after the recruitment, they are using it for onboarding, and a few months down the line, same report potentially could be used for team development kind of sessions as well, isn't it?
Correct to an extent. So it could be exactly as you suggest. So, let's say you've just brought on a new team of individuals, or you've got a few new individuals in a team. They've been through the selection process. They've been through the onboarding process with an onboarding report. Maybe in another 3 months, you generate that report again and you use it in the team setting. But what we would say is that after 6 months, we would ask people to repeat the questionnaire. Okay, the reason is we might see that maybe their preferences or their style or the way that they're motivated might have changed over that 6-month period. You might see some adjustments there. So if you're doing it more than 6 months after that person has been through the selection process, we'd get them to do it again. To make sure that it's up to date and accurate to how they currently enjoy to behave.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. So thank you, Laura. That's been great, actually. So lots of great insights to make the onboarding process from being transactional to transformational, as you described, isn't it? Really powerful insights there. Thanks a lot for that. Just conscious of the time, we haven't got any more questions, so we can draw the session to close. And thank you, everyone, for taking time to join us today. Really great to have you all with us today. Like I was saying earlier, this is the final webinar of 2021, but we'll bring more of these sessions to you in 2022 as well. And so thanks, Laura, and we'll follow up with slides and recording.
Thank you, Renu. That's fantastic, and thanks for everyone for joining.
Thank you. I'm just going to pause the recording now.